actually had a question that I figured would have had to come up at some point.
Yeah.
Because you were revisiting it. Would you say that it had good replay value?
Warning. This podcast may contain spoilers as well as coarse language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Kampai. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Our Anime Podcast, otherwise known as Tokyo Podfathers. We're back with a very special episode today because myself and three of our co-hosts have, we kind of lost a bet. So joining me today are my fellow bet losers. We have TazerLad. How are you doing?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks.
And then we're also joined by Mathwiz. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm also happy to be here. Happy to be a loser in this case.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So, I mean, we're kind of winners, even though we lost to replay value in our fantasy football league. And I'm joined with the only non-loser, Sinrus. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. First time in my life I've been the only non-loser. So this is a nice change of pace. Yeah, I lose the bet. I just like this show, and I'm jumping on the chance to talk about it.
Yeah, we were talking about how this is one of those shows that when you often lose a bet, at least an anime-related bet, you kind of have to watch a notoriously bad show. You know, something along our favorite lines of, like, Citrus or I'm trying to think of other bad shows. Like, what's that one? Pupa or whatever?
Yeah. Oh, Pupa, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Something that's, like, notoriously bad, or, you know, something along those lines that's punishing. Like, you really felt like you lost a bet. But replay value is nice enough and so dedicated to pushing his agenda that we got to do a podcast on Kyousogiga. One of your favorite kind of like underwatched gem. It's a 10-episode series from 2010. You know, we've actually talked about it on our podcast during our recommendations episode with Sinrus, who brought it up.
Yeah, I think it was on my list.
Yeah, it was on your list, so we had a fun discussion about it, but we haven't dedicated an entire podcast to it, and since TazerLad and Mathwiz have seen it for the first time, I'm really excited to hear what you guys thought about it. I have no idea. I don't think we've talked about it at all in our group chat, so I guess starting with you, Tazer, what did you think? How was it?
It was like, I guess I'll quote my own tweet of it, saying that it was like, especially like the back half was like so much to take in, but in a really nice and like I'm gonna enjoy rewatching this at some point way, because like even just before the podcast I went back and I rewatched the like the preview episode that I think is on Crunchyroll or Verve, and just like I think because that's like one of the like ONAs I think that came out like before the series proper.
Is it the episode 0?
I think so, yeah. It's like it's titled like preview, and like so seeing
I'll
that.
explain the whole convoluted OVA ONA thing later, but that's like, not what it is.
Okay, because like watching that like after having finished the series, it's like there's a lot of like even just like little things there where it's like okay, I see what it was going for there, and like yeah, it's so like richly dense in a way that just feels like it's going to be really fun to kind of break down and crack apart like on a rewatch or even on like a discussion in general.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely how I felt. And I was even just like rewatching it for the first time in a couple of years. I was like, yeah, this show is really dense and there's a lot to get into. And I hope I'm in the right state of mind to process this, which is definitely not after Friday, any night football. Definitely not that state of mind. So what did you think, Mathwiz? I'm excited because I don't know if you tweeted about it, or if you did, I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, I did. I didn't really tweet about the show much. I just, like, kept screen capping the one, like, the, like, otaku scientist girl, and that was most of my posts. However, the show was good.
Just gotta stay on brand.
You know, that way I didn't have to worry about, you know, spoilers or anything. It's just like, yeah, I'll just stick to this.
Yeah, she is great. I love her too. I kind of forgot just how fun the episode was that featured her is almost like a secondary character, but she still like stood out a lot. So I respect that. We need that agenda. So thank you for sharing and spreading the agenda. Yeah.
Well, I actually had a question that I figured would have had to come up at some point. Because you were revisiting it. Would you say that it had good replay value?
There it is. Yeah. I think it's pretty on brand replay value. That's going at the beginning of this pod. We're putting that as like that's the intro. Yeah, so I think me and Sinrus were both in the same boat where we kind of like half rewatched it. So I'm wondering, you're kind of the Kyousogiga expert for me because I felt like majorly dumb rewatching this. So I'm hoping that you have the answers. Like you got it all.
Sure, I will do my best. I will say when we decided we were going to do this episode, I was like, oh, like, great, an excuse to rewatch it. I've never rewatched it before. I'm going to watch, like, the old OVA. I'm going to watch the ONA, the 5-episode thing. I'm going to be, like, all set with all the different versions of the story. And then I just had, like, a super busy weekend, and all last week had to cram for seasonals to record impressions also this weekend. So I did not end up getting to rewatch any of the main series. I only watched the ONA for the first time.
Oh, that's really helpful though. What did you think of that?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it is the same stuff. Like it's the same story, like condensed. But there are some other ways in which it was different. So I guess to give context to people listening, because Kyosougiga is one of those series that's infamously very difficult to figure out what you're supposed to be watching. Not because it has a confusing watch order or anything, but just because they aired so many different versions of it.
Yeah.
Right.
That the original thing was like a single 25-minute episode from 2011, which tries to tell like a whole full story in that time, like sandwiched in between these two action sequences of like Koto destroying the city and then like her getting swallowed by Bishimaru at the end. Then after that, in 2012, they did the ONA, which was like 5 10-minute episodes that are pretty good, but like very condensed and everything. And then finally, they did the main series in 2013. And if anybody is interested in getting into this and wants to know what to watch, the real answer is just watch the 10-episode series. Everything else is just like slightly differing, shorter versions of that. But that episode 0 that you mentioned earlier is actually something they aired just before the 10-episode series that is just like an updated, like remade version of the original 1-episode OVA.
Okay.
Gotcha.
But they took out a post-credit scene from it, which is basically like after everything that happens, like Lady Koto returns to the city. Young Koto says like, "Great, now I can go home," and then Inari tells her like, "What? No, don't you realize you can never go home again?" And then it just ends.
Damn.
But that's irrelevant now. They kind of like it seems like they were reworking all of the background of the story throughout the many different iterations of it, because the actual ending of the series and what everything was summing to all along is really different from what anything that was seen in the previous versions. All of the stuff with like the shrine and like the history of God and all of that is all brand new.
Yeah, that's probably a really good segue to talk about just how it's a very abstract series. So I could definitely see them kind of changing things along the way and it not being super noticeable until you actually get to the main series and you're like, oh, so this is like the actual ending, understood. Because I'm sure it's like thematically consistent, but I think the themes come home really strong about like kind of accepting family and, you know, coming together in the end, even through very unusual different circumstances, but it's an interesting journey to get there. And I think the way that the series presents it is part of the fun. So, yeah, I think it's almost really tough to describe because I was watching this on my TV and then my fiance was like kind of half paying attention. And I was like, I'm not gonna try and describe this to you. I'm just like, know that there's a lot going on and it's really fun. So that's kind of,
just embrace the chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, embrace the chaos. He liked the opening a lot, so that was something. But I think
I love the opening. This is actually my favorite opening in anime.
I was gonna ask you if it was still your favorite opening, and I love that. Fun fact: I actually tried to go back and watch Replay Value's video on Kyousogiga, and he just made a video on the opening, which I still didn't get to finish, but I guess go plug if you haven't seen that already. I think he does a cool analysis based on the opening and, you know, the different messages, because there's a lot of maybe not so hidden messages, but a lot of really cool symbolism in the opening for the actual series, especially when they show the different shots of the kids, like kind of showing the kids' emotional state through the middle section of the opening. So yeah. I always thought that was pretty cool, but
yeah,
a detail I really liked in the opening too was how like the cracks in the screen get bigger with each episode.
Yeah. Oh wait, I didn't even notice that. Mm-hmm. Wait, I didn't notice that.
I didn't either, because I also watched Replay Value's video.
We just like turned to him and like, Replay Value. So what did you think? It's been 2 years since he's made a video, so I'm hoping he does another one, because he says I want to make more videos on this. So time for him to live up to that. But
there was a great video that I watched after first seeing this show like 4 years ago, by a guy named, I think it was Sentok, something like that. And I went back to revisit it for this and discovered that apparently after being up for 4 years with no problem, like 3 months ago, it got copyright striked and taken down.
No. So, how could they?
I know.
That's not fair. Because, okay, let's be real. Like, no one's like, yo, that Kyousogiga cache, let's get in on that. Like, no one's doing that. Come on.
Right.
Just let them spread the message. Yeah, so that's not fair. But I think, well, I'm sad. I would love to go watch that. But it's cool because, like, Under the Scope has a video, Ember reviews, Alexander. So there is a lot of reviews on it. So I hope that maybe more people can get through it from our podcast and then other videos out there to watch after. Because it is one of those series that I feel like you kind of want to read up on some essays and analysis afterwards to kind of like help understand what other people were thinking after they watched it. Because there is just a lot of like dense chaos going on. So
yeah, I think it's no surprise that like it appeals to like the type of people who enjoy making like anime analysis YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point when you put it that way.
Yeah, that's so true. And both of you do, so I'm just saying.
In theory, yes.
In theory.
Yeah, y'all could be next. But yeah, so I guess getting into the heart of it, I wanted to kind of get everyone's thoughts first on like, what do you guys think the series means to you per se? Like when you finished it, what was like your major takeaway? Like how did you feel? Okay, I'll go first.
I was gonna say I'd love to hear the perspective of it from first timers, because it is one of those series, like you said, that makes you want to like consume essays and analysis about it. I feel like I've been doing that for so long since seeing it that, you know, like my distance from my first perspective feels so far away now.
Yeah, I guess I can start then, because like I felt like, I guess like weirdly at peace after I finished it, which kind of was an interesting, like it kind of surprised me because like I, you know, marathoned like the back half of it because it was just like, it was just getting like better and better, and like the cliffhangers it was leaving off of, it's like, well, I gotta keep watching this. And like for as kind of like grand of a tale and for how like dense again it is, like for it to like wrap up in the way that it did, with it all just kind of being about something like a message that's definitely like a lot more simple, you know, it's not exactly trying to be overly profound. It was just like, this is an interesting like angle, and kind of like maybe, you know, reconsider the entire like what the entire series had kind of been doing with, you know, some of the smaller moments. And like, yeah, it just kind of left me with a very like content feeling, is I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely like emotional catharsis at the end, which is interesting given how a lot of the events that transpire, they don't really feel like they could come to a peaceful conclusion. And I thought that was like interesting the first time I watched it as well. Yeah, so Mathwiz, what did you think first time? New blood, what can we get?
Well, I know like going into this, like just kind of hearing vague things about it, that I I knew going into like, okay, family is the thing that I should be looking for in this series. And I mean, yeah, it's definitely doing that. I don't know, like I thought I mean, like, you know, it was good. I thought there were some like really I don't have any in particular like that come to mind, but there were a lot of just like little lines of dialogue in there that just kind of resonated. That it's just like, huh, yeah. I don't know. Like it all comes together pretty well. Obviously, like visually, it's just stunning the whole way through. Like that was one thing I had looked into the stuff before the TV series, and that was kind of just like the one thing I had taken away was like, I don't really know what's going on yet, but visually it's really cool. Yeah, I liked it.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you both liked it.
Yeah, me too. I was in like a similar state of like, okay, but like, what do I say now? Yeah, I think I was in the same boat. I think I obviously really liked it, but I think what really stuck out to me was like, a lot of times I'm not like super compelled by like episode 0 type things where they give you like a preview of what's to come with the series. But I always really liked episode 0 for kind of giving us like, maybe I guess I'd say like a flash forward taste of what the characters would be like. It's kind of like a daily life of them. And so when we go back to somewhat of the beginning in episode 1, I know what to kind of look forward to. And something that happens really quickly that I appreciate, because it could easily go wrong in other series, but it's handled very well in Kyousogiga, is that I think they do like a lot of kind of behind the scenes characterizations for a lot of the characters. So for example, like Koto shows up in episode 1. By episode 2 or 3, she already has a dynamic with the 3 children, and they didn't really have to go into extreme detail on it. Like, we already know that she has a friendly relationship with Yase. She's living with Miyoi. I think I'm saying his name wrong, as usual. Miyoi, okay. Like, she's living with him, and they have a very, like, sibling rivalry dynamic. She gets along with Yase, a bit more indifferent towards Kurama. But that was something that, like, they didn't really have to go into extreme detail or show us, because they just kind of said, like, okay, this just, like, already exists. And a lot of times that could feel rushed. But I think it's a good use of time in this series because it's kind of fast moving all the time. So I'm more willing to just accept, like, okay, they just have a dynamic. Like, we're here, they have a dynamic, let's move on, because everything is so fast moving in an interesting way.
I had really liked those first, like, initial episodes, kind of going through character by character and more, like, episodic kind of stories. I think my favorite episode of the series was the one focusing on Yase. And just, like, the whole idea of, like, this, like, sentimental value or, like, memories kind of, like, being tied to these objects that she was, like, hoarding. And, like, kind of moving on from that and, like, learning that you can... I don't know. It was very like, I don't know. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but like, I don't know. It was just very, very good, like establishing the characters and, and sort of giving something of like a basis for the more like insanity that was the second half.
Yeah. Kind of grounding the feelings with like the chaos of everything later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. That's because that's how I felt too. I like that. I like the narrative decision to focus on each one of the siblings, kind of give their own backstory back when they were living in the temple, and then how they're feeling now in the Looking Glass City. I think that was a really cool narrative decision, and it's cool because there's only 10 episodes, which is so rare for a series to accomplish so much in 10 episodes. So it's like a very good use of time.
Yeah, I think I'm always impressed when a series is so ambitious with its scope and also comes in at like below a normal core length. Like this is something, like I think Fully Cooley is my go-to example for this, given that it like crams more content into 6 episodes than most like 2 core shows do in 4 times that length. But also, even like less dramatically, I feel like a lot of I'm blanking on his name. Yuasa shows are like most of his shows are 11 episodes. Yeah. Like not for any particular reason. They just have one less episode than most shows do, and feel like they fit so much more into that time. And Kyosougiga, within that same sort of framework of those sorts of series, is like, it's just so crammed with story and character and just action that they pack it all in such a way that it's incredibly dense to try and pick apart. So I'm curious if either of you newcomers to the series felt like at the end you had like a solid idea of, you know, what the actual story was in the end, or were you just like along for the ride the whole time?
It was a little bit of both, I guess. Like, it was a lot of along for the ride, definitely, just kind of, like, not necessarily, like, expecting, like, oh, this will be explained to me by the end or anything like that, but just kind of, like, the story is so, like, confident with chugging along, it's just kind of like, okay, I will also go along for the ride now, and we'll, like, evaluate at the end. But, like, yeah, like, by the very end, like, I guess it definitely was more me just trying to break down the story in, like, broad strokes rather than trying to be like, okay, so this is the timeline of events. This happened then this happened. Now Inari looks like, you know, Koto's age for some reason, and it's like kind of like they mentioned something about reincarnation in there. I don't know what that's about, but we're still rolling.
Yeah, that happened to me. I think I got like tripped up even with episode 2 where they introduced Koto, and I'm like, okay, so he's Inari, he's still a priest. They're in a different temple. I don't know what world they're in. It seems like there are many worlds going on. Does that mean, like, where are we? I was like, what's going on? So that one always trips me up because I'm like, okay, like, it's like I need to brain blast to understand. I'm like, okay, we're different.
And it doesn't help that a lot of the characters have multiple names and that many of the characters have the same names.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, I'm trying to find his full name because it's not actually the same. So it's,
which one?
Yaki Shimaru. So,
yeah.
Because their dad's name was Mioe, and then Yaki Shimaru becomes Mioe, just like Koto, and then there's Lady Koto. So, like, it's a lot of, like, names and roles associated that people, like, take on.
Right, like titles.
Yeah, like titles. So that was just like, okay, I need to hyper focus, need to get in the zone. So that was always something.
Yeah, I think every time I was like getting like trying to like get too far out of scope with it, I would remember like because the show always opens with like, this is a tale, you know, about family, and you know, back when the line between God and man was more vague, and I'm like, okay, so I guess I just keep that in my mind because it's obviously important, and it's trying to be like, yeah, like things are a little kind of vague on purpose.
Right.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I was remembering that too, where they're like, it's almost like they're reassuring you, like, hey guys, it's about family, just stick with that. It's like, okay, we're along for the ride. Yeah. Family time. Family is everything. So,
I know that, like, another nugget I had kind of taken away from the ending. I forget which character it was that said it, but there was, it might have been Koto, it might have been somebody talking to Koto, but someone had said a line about, like it's okay to start over or, like, reset or something to that effect. And I thought that was just really interesting, especially considering, like, in the case of Yakushimaru, where, like, he had a family before and, like, lost that family. And so, you know, I guess his character could kind of be seen as, like, you know, sort of starting over and, like, I don't know. I thought it was just, that element in particular I thought was interesting in as far as, like, the portrayal of family and how, like, you know, in his case, he, like, just because, like, his original parents were, like, gone, you know, like, he was still able to sort of, like, make a new family. And it's the sort of thing, I guess, where, like, you can always kind of, like, I don't know, get those kind of feelings with other people in some way. I don't know. It's definitely, like, I have, like, nuggets of what I think the show is going for, but it's, like, a rewatch would definitely, I think, help certain things click into place more.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's interesting because, you know, for as much as the series hits home about it being about, like, family, right, and the, family unit is definitely something that's kind of fleshed out as it goes along. Like, obviously, like, the actual, like, quote unquote, like, biological relationship between, like, the siblings and their parents is very, again, like, vague, if not, like, non-existent in some cases, where, like, two of the children are just basically drawings come to life, and even Lady Koto is also that. So, and then it's not also even specified.
Koto is the only one who's actually biologically related to them.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, that doesn't, like, the show never goes so far as to, like, say, like, but that means the bond is, like, less or anything like that. No, it's just like, no, it's just family is family. And even in this case, if it's like an element of found family, it's like still just as valid, if not like more so.
Yeah, that's always something that I like to see in stories, that kind of tackle more of the found family as opposed to just looking at it more, I don't know, traditionally.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is cool that they don't really try and make anyone like lesser because of their blood relation or lack thereof, or even their status as like, let's say a real person or not. But like, that's a very interesting aspect. I think it's really interesting, too, the way it does play around with roles, because one of my favorite parts of the series, since we brought him up, so the Yakushimaru, why am I, whatever.
Yakushimaru?
Yakushimaru?
I think it is.
Yeah. So, the main, like, their first son, who they still call the youngest son, he's definitely my favorite character. I think when his first character episode happened, that was like a real shock for me, just because it really drastically changed the tone and shifting focus of everything. Because up until that point, especially with episode 1, everything was framed in this really like, happy, hopeful, heartwarming family frame of everything. And then you shift to his focus and you see him being revived and made immortal by the original Mioe, otherwise known as Inari, the main priest. The way it shows his perspective of like the words the other guy is saying as like almost like this horror element of like, you want to kill yourself and be with your family, but like you're not allowed to. You're going to be forced to live again. And even something that should be reassuring, like saying, eventually you'll come to the point where you want to live and like you won't want to kill yourself, is framed in such a like terrifying antagonistic way to him. And it was so interesting to see like his view on everything is so much different from everyone else's, and it added this really poignant tinge of despair to the series and his character. So
yeah, it's also ironic once you get deeper into the series, because really what the whole story boils down to is that the plot is all kicked off as a result of Inari having like the same sort of existential crisis, and basically wanting to kill himself but not being able to. And the fact that he then like inflicts that same thing on his adoptive son, and puts him in that same position, and then tries to make Yakushimaru like his replacement as a god and everything. It does add a really sort of twisted lens through it. And I will agree that Yakushimaru Mioe is my favorite character in the series.
Let's go.
They really do him dirty too. Like, even when you not get into like the really twisted stuff, but they decide to give him siblings, and they like paint siblings into existence for him, but they paint them to be older than him. So like if the new siblings show up and he's the youngest now, it's like, it's such a strange family dynamic, even beyond the fact that they were like magically created painting people.
Okay, maybe this was me being kind of optimistic, but I viewed it as like they created older siblings because they knew that he would need more guidance. But I mean, I think from like a very petty point of view, if I was the first kid and they created more siblings that are like, you're still younger, I'd be very pissed. I'd be like,
yeah, exactly.
They did not earn this. I showed up first. I'm literally older than them and immortal. How could you guys do this to me?
Right.
As someone with who's the eldest brother, whose younger brother is like half a foot taller than him, I can relate.
Oh, likewise. I'm in exactly the same boat.
Yeah, same. Yeah, my sister is like 13 years younger than me, and she's already 5 inches taller. So she didn't earn this. I've been around so long. Give me the height. So I feel this. I think we're all on the same page at how twisted this is.
I thought the other thing that was kind of almost like chilling early on, there was like the proverb or saying or whatever about like the dog waiting for its master.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember the other one's name. It's like Yase and I don't remember his name.
Kurama.
Kurama?
Yeah, Kurama. They're like talking. And then I think it was Kurama that said something about like, well, that's not what I think of, or whatever. Like something about like the dog was waiting for what came in the end, and that sort of like being analogous to Yakushimaru as like, you know, immortal but like wanting to die, and then how that also kind of ties in with the head priest character.
Yeah.
And I really liked also kind of at the end with his character that, you know, the whole time he's sort of like, and I guess it's kind of similar, that could be like a connecting through line for both of them, is that neither of them really had like a purpose in life. And so they were just kind of like aimlessly moving about. But I really liked the one line at the end. I had to like go through my screen caps to find it. But it was basically like, what's wrong with just existing? Which I thought was, I don't know, powerful line.
Yeah, that's a fantastic line. I like that.
Especially for like a series that is like, so again, like visually like both stunning and chaotic. I feel like it's very resonant when it's like, can't you just like, you know, what is wrong with existing? And I think like, especially for it's like it being something to relate to when, you know, life gets hectic or when it gets a little out of control. It's just like being able to be content with just being can be like a really, I think, powerful rock to have in those moments.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Especially coming off of quarantine. It's like sometimes existing is just enough. I see so many tweets and like things that are so reassuring about like, you know, sometimes it's enough just to get through the day. You don't have to beat yourself up for not being too productive. And then in a similar vein, it's like, you know, sometimes it's not about like, you know, what's your real family? What goals do you have? Sometimes it's just about enjoying the day to day. So I definitely agree with that, especially in regards to the themes of this series. So I do like that. And it's so funny to see how antagonistic the siblings can be with each other when, you know, you see some of the episodes and it's like they're all just having fun on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, the sibling relationship is fun too.
Yeah.
I feel like it's weirdly rare in anime to see sibling relationships that are actually like contentious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of some.
It's almost always like you just have the younger sibling who is like kind of a scamp, you know? Like at worst. And it rarely gets into like, you know, fighting with your siblings, which I think all of us who have siblings can say is probably the biggest part of any sibling relationship.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Rolling up, especially these tall youngin siblings. Gotta stop with that. Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's framed in such a cool, over-the-top way because I was noticing it especially on rewatch, but the Council of Three in that giant room where they're on like these giant colored blocks and they have I really don't know the word for this, but it's kind of like what they have over like baby cradles, like you know, like those things that
mobiles. Is that what like they're?
Yeah, I think that's So like the whole ceiling is made of these mobiles, and there's this very like childlike aesthetic to it, where they're almost in like a toy box, where they're having these like big discussions over the fate of the city and the fate of their own world. But it's all framed in such this like joyful, childlike way.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
It hit me this time that like there's a lot of childlike aspects to it. Even the you know, I think it's episode 3, which is the Kurama episode, or more importantly, the Shoko episode, which is the cute what is she? She's not a cute scientist girl. I'll call her a gamer. She's kind of a pro gamer. Because,
yeah, she's definitely a gamer.
She's a gamer. And even her remote control that she was trying to find, which looks like, you know, kind of like a PSP, throwback to the olden days when you had portable PlayStations. So I'll say for the youngins, that's a Nintendo Switch.
See, I was going all the way back to like what's it Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. This is the right chat. We got the right crew. We got the.
Well, she also did have the like it wasn't a Game Boy, it was a Game Girl. But she did have the original the Game Girl, which I thought was amusing.
I love that. I didn't notice that, but that's awesome. Yeah, so it's like that's what she's trying to find, which she loses in a bar, which is funny. And then that's what she's using to control the giant robot. So there's this whole like, you know, kind of childlike view of childlike things brought to life, even from like toys to machines. Especially like Yase's place looks like so many different like stuffed animals. All of her monster friends kind of look like stuffed animals. So I like that kind of aesthetic that they bring to it that makes it very both Alice in Wonderland-y, because there is the through the looking glass city aspect, and then just the general aesthetic.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting contrast, like you were saying, with the Council of Three. And the more I think about it, like the more I guess it really does fit with a sibling dynamic, because like they're the only people in your life that you've, you know, grown up with and like been there for basically like a majority of like the moments. And so like even now, like, you know, when you're adults, when you're think like, okay, all of that petty childness is behind us, we can have a conversation like real adults. And then 10 minutes later, you're bringing up stuff you did when you were 5 and getting angry about it.
Yeah.
It's like
so
sometimes that part just doesn't leave you, because like it's a relationship that you've like been constantly building on, that like those foundation is still there, and it can still be in, you know, some cases like very incendiary.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I love that aspect of it. It's really interesting to think about. There's so many I think there are so many small details that kind of escape me that I'm hoping that you all have like some kind of like some kind of answer or like input on, because I feel like the second time around too, I was always kind of lost on like Lady Koto's, you know, real input on the series, because I was always, you know, paying a lot of attention because she has the same name as Koto, and I was like kind of looking out for her in the same way all the kids are looking for her. So I was wondering, do you guys have any kind of like takes on her, so to speak, positive, negative, otherwise?
That's a good question. Now that you mention it, you know, she doesn't really have like a ton of agency in the show. You know, like she's hugely important, but she's off screen for basically the whole thing, obviously, because everyone's goal is to find her again. I think the biggest, like most interesting thing to discuss with regards to her is about, you know, why she left the city, the Mirror Capital, because it's interesting, like, you know, what is the right thing for her to have done in that sort of situation? Because she leaves because she's having the visions of the city being destroyed. And the city is going to be destroyed because of her actions of, you know, she was supposed to, like, give up the Bodhisattva's body once Myoe, like, returned her love. And she doesn't do that and chooses to, like, stay and live with him. And then because she's the god of the Mirror Capital, like, her bad karma from going back on her word is what causes the Mirror Capital to start to be destroyed. So she leaves to, like, protect her family and their home and everything, but the fact that she did so is also what causes so much pain for all of the other characters, because now they have to, like, exist without their mother, who they care about so much. I think that dichotomy of, you know, what is the right course of action for her to do throughout all those things is an interesting one to think about, because there isn't really a good answer.
Yeah, I think that's a great point on it. Like, that's way more than I could have thought of. So I think that's a good point to remember, that, like, sometimes I get lost in, you know, like, why did they leave, and seemingly like, you know, they had Koto elsewhere, like why did they end up leaving? But it is the sense of like everything is destroyed, kind of like this paradise they created for their kids to live happily, because in their original world, I don't want to call it the real world because it sounds like they have many worlds going on, so not sure how much is like quote unquote real world, but they have this like interesting implication because they have this one screen that I picked up that I didn't pick up on the first time, and it was a timeline of events, and it was kind of like a comical one where it goes like long time ago, long ago, like, you know, it was like one of those scales of like how long ago is long ago, and they essentially imply that the reason they have to escape to the Looking Glass City is because Kurama went down to the main capital, which is what he always wanted. He always wanted to get out of the temple, see the world. He was a very curious, very curious kid who wanted to learn more about the world around him. And it was kind of implied that the way the capital found out about them is because he went down to town, and that's why they got in trouble. So it's this interesting idea of how like their family just wasn't made, their family wasn't allowed to exist. And it's almost like, is it better to have, you know, the fantasy of your family living happily ever after, or to acknowledge reality? And it kind of tries to do both. And I think at the end, it kind of comes to terms with like, you shouldn't try to escape, you know, the family that you built, even if certain elements are fighting against it. So it's an interesting way of reaffirming that despite the conflicts, it's important for family to stay together and to like acknowledge everyone's worth.
Yeah, I like that take on it. I had forgotten about, you know, what it was that caused them to have to flee.
Yeah, because they leave a lot, like, there were a lot of details in the background, and it was almost like a Monogatari, like, text screen where, you know, you're kind of like, oh, you know, it's going by really quickly. I don't have to look at it. But I paused it this time, and I was like, okay, they have the, like, full timeline, and they mention, like, Kurama going to the city, and then it's, like, Capital freaking out over them. They word it much more intelligently than like Capital freaking out, but that was essentially, I think, the catalyst for the Capital finding out the existence of this family that was, by their own opinion, I don't know, that wasn't allowed to exist because apparently it would ruin the time-space continuum.
Right.
Yeah,
it's such an interesting family dynamic because of how like ridiculous it is. You know, how completely unrelatable their circumstances are to like real family dynamics, but also how relatable the characters are to real families. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah,
because it's so over the top, but then there are so many like grounded emotions.
Right. What did you guys think of how they handled like flashbacks within the series, like piecing together Koto's past and how she learned about like who her parents are and the shrine and all of that?
I thought it was interesting. There was a lot of like, it felt like there were several times where with the flashbacks it was like, okay, this story's being told in like a slightly like out of order way, like especially when it came to like Yakushimaru's backstory. It was like when we first saw that little bit of like, you know, the house burning, I was like, okay, what's going on here? And then, you know, Inari brings him back and is like, hey, I found him. And I thought at that point, like, okay, that was just that, right? And I was like, I understand, context is given. And then the next episode, they decide to go even more in detail and again, make it much more tragic. And I was like, okay, so that's what they're doing. So I feel like there's just a lot of like definitely playing with how much you know throughout the series, which has both its, I think, advantages and disadvantages in terms of like a first-time watcher, but is definitely also, I think, something I would pay extra attention to going through it a second time.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought one of the little moments that I kind of had with that, I'm not sure if I'm like getting stuff from the ONAs mixed in at this point, but I remember like the scene of Koto and Yakushimaru, and Koto had like the fruit or whatever that she like took from him and like bites into, and it's just sort of like, okay, what does this mean? But then like they get to the flashback episode where like that is what keeps him alive and like makes him immortal, or not even keeps him alive, brings him back to life.
Yeah. The pomegranate heart.
Yeah. Like I still don't really know what that symbolized, but it was more like when it went back to that scene, or not. I don't know if it went back to the scene or more that they were just like standing next to each other in like a similar position, and I was like, oh wait. I thought it was a very interesting way to sort of tell things in like an achronological order. And I also liked, you know, going back to those original episodes, how like it had a very episodic sort of structure going through like the individual characters, but you kind of get little pieces here and there of like what's going on with other characters, and then by the end it all like ties in together.
Yeah, I actually did like the same thing, Mathwiz, when like I saw that scene. I was like, wait, what's going on there? And then like I think like then I didn't immediately go to the next episode, and a few days later I went to it, and like, you know, they got to the pomegranate and I was like, wait, why is this so visually striking? Where did I see this before? I saw this before in this series, didn't I? And I went back and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like then like a few more things were clicking, and it was like just made it much more I guess resonant at that point.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of blanking on all of the details, but I'm guessing what they were trying to say, because I think they showed her eating the pomegranate and it was like child her and child him, like the child versions of themselves. Yeah, like her eating the pomegranate too. It's what stuck out to me was how Koto tried to it was original Mioi, priest, Inari, whatever. He warned Lady Koto not to eat it because it's not a creature for the living. But they also mentioned that this world was hell, and I think they kind of said that. I'm not sure if that was kind of like a half-hearted sentence, because like they kind of said it really Ghibli, because they were like, oh, you know, it's got demons and Buddha and a priest, like, yeah, it's hell, as in like some kind of afterlife. But I think what they were trying to go for with that scene with her eating the pomegranate as well is kind of like that was originally what brought him back to life and kind of kept him living. And I think the relationship with her and their family, specifically her, is kind of like another sister, will keep him living further because he has a new reason for living. So
I like that interpretation.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's not the interpretation that I had, at least at first. I like that interpretation.
I had completely forgotten about like this isn't like something for the living to eat. So that's a really cool observation.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were trying to say it's like literally hell or just like they're not on the plane of living. I kind of confused on that one.
Yeah, because that scene was also the one with, you know, young Koto and young Myoe was like, you know, I took that to mean, at least with the context, because then going, you know, immediately after that is when he's like, when we find, you know, our mom, I want you to kill me. And so knowing that like kind of Koto's whole deal is, you know, destruction to this extent, it kind of was like, is that what that's symbolizing? But again, I like what you were saying more, because the whole atmosphere of it is obviously a lot more lighthearted and jovial, and like, you know, Koto not even necessarily like, you know, not really taking the weight of what that moment you would think would be. She's just kind of, you know, bites it and gives a really cute smirk, and then like the scene progresses.
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't sure if I was kind of projecting too much like happy emotion on something that should be kind of like a bit more like, you know, bittersweet, but I think that works. I think it works too, because in the end, I do think like she becomes kind of like his reason for living, in the sense that like he found purpose in really living for himself and just, you know, not kind of looking towards the next goal, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
I love the dynamics just between the two of them over the course of the series as they kind of like come to terms with each other too.
I really liked the sort of contrast they had going on, where Koto has the bit where she's like crying and she's like, well, at least you have a past to be like sad over. Like I only have the future. So, you know, that sort of like providing a dichotomy between them.
I'm gonna be honest, a lot of Koto's character I think kind of like goes over my head, even though like I really like her and I like her role, but like every time I try to like really focus on like her role per se, besides I think, you know, them trying to kind of like force roles onto her and force different kind of objectives, every time I try and grasp it, it's like, no, you do not understand. Do not go back. Yeah.
Koto is an interesting character because, like, in terms of what she's supposed to mean, because from like the lore perspective of like the plot that's kind of hidden behind all of the bombasticness of the series, like why Koto was born, I think is a question that's never really fully answered. What was the plan for her that Inari and Lady Koto had, and is what ended up happening what they really wanted? It is hard to say, but it's cool that her role is basically as a combination of everyone else in the series, in terms of like her birth as like the only biological child of like a god and a Buddha kind of gives her the ability to bring together the powers that each of the individuals have had, but have had like their own reasons for not wanting to use or not feeling ready to use. And she doesn't know they have that she has them until the end, but once she does, she becomes kind of that symbol of unity that's able to like bring the whole family back together and give everyone a reason to like play nice with each other and put their old grudges aside, and just like be able to keep existing and not worry about everything that's gone wrong.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so she's kind of like the physical personification of their family coming together.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which I guess would
would
like kind of track with her being, a combination of her mother and father in like the most literal sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that take. Let's go. Get hype. Now I get it.
Like, she's also just, I don't know, I do really love her energy. Like,
of course.
Towards like I think one of my favorite moments in the series is just like it's really small, but it was like towards, I think it's the end of episode, like it's either 8 or 9, when she like brings her hammer up to the head priest's or the head of the shrine's like head, and it's just like, all right, here's the deal. Either we're gonna like work something out, or I'm just gonna destroy everything myself. It's just like, I'm like, yes, I love that.
I love the hammer too. That's one of those things that's just such a inspired design choice.
Top 10 anime weapons of all time.
Seriously.
And I love the way that they like draw it too, where it's sort of this like formless sort of thing. Like you can see like the outline of it, and it's got like the bright colors like in the middle, but it's not like, it's not just like a hammer.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. As like in my head when I was watching it again, I was kind of saw it as like the different like glowing balls in it are kind of like planets, so it's almost like she has like a universe in the hammer, and that's what she's using to destroy elements of the world, is like she's smashing stuff with a universe.
Oh, that's cool, because what it actually is like lore wise is it's Inari's heart.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes so much sense.
I think there's the scene where he, in one of the flashbacks, where he like pulls it out and gives it to her when it's just like the orb, and then she turns it into the hammer.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it being evocative of like being a universe unto itself fits in with that perfectly.
Yeah, he is the universe.
I feel like it would be, pardon the pun, a smash hit at conventions to like cosplay.
Totally. Yeah.
Got him.
Like, I don't know, it feels like it'd be really cool to see like someone make it professionally.
That would be so tough, but I think
it feels like the kind of thing you could probably make an approximation of pretty easily too. Like you could totally just do like a plastic mold of it.
Okay, I found it. I looked up Koto cosplay. Here it is. We got him.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome.
Oh, that's a perfect cosplay.
That's so cool. I love it. I really love the character designs in general. At first I was thinking of like Lady Koto as like a goated design. But younger Koto is cool too. I feel like this is kind of the pinnacle of like tomboy designs, because she has this like really interesting androgynous look to her, where like when she's younger, it almost does look like she's just kind of like one of the boys, just beating the shit out of them casually, true badass moves. But like her
that's
entire
just like
design,
tuck in your arms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, tuck in your arms to punch better. That was so funny. I love that scene. That was so funny.
I also love how like she had several scenes of just headbutting people.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
I was thinking of one of my favorite scenes too is one of my favorite parts of very big over the top shows like this, where most things are very bombastic in nature, is when they dial it back and you get a more subtle kind of, kind of more understated scene. And I think after Miyoi had his like freak out on her, I think it was episode 5 or something. He had a freak out on her, and then she went to go look at the train station, which is where everything leaves the world. And she comes back, and he's with the dog, of course, and she just starts talking to the dog, pretty much saying everything she would want to say to him, but to the dog. It's like, oh, did you come to pick me up with your human kind of thing?
Yeah.
And that was like a really cool scene of like subtly her reaching out an olive branch without being super obvious about it, because like you get those uncomfortable moments where sometimes it's tough to just be straight up and be like, so like you kind of freaked out on me, what's going on?
Yeah, like we just had a fight, but now we've got to make up, but it's hard to just say that to your face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially when they're both presented as such stubborn characters. So that was like a cool way of having them open up to what ends up being like a really impactful conversation where he asks her to find a way to kill him later. So I think it shows a lot of maturity for someone, especially when you're kind of used to so many tomboy characters just being like thick-headed, oblivious to things. But she does have this level of emotional maturity that you don't often see, but is definitely present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, too, like, a big part of what makes her so fun and compelling to watch is, like, you were talking about her design, and I think it is, like, perfect for the character, but it's not, like, just visually it's not a super exciting design, but the way they animate her and, like, make her emote is so good. Like, Jeff, I think from the first episode, when she's, like, running away from the like scientists troops and smashing shit up with the hammer, and she's just like walking along on the roof with the hammer over her shoulder, and she's like swinging her arms, and she makes all these like these awesome like cheeky faces and all. The way that they just like make her move is perfect.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned Fooly Cooly earlier, because I definitely get a lot of Fooly Cooly vibes and like the vibrant kind of, not abstract, but like fluidity of art styles and animation, where you could tell that they're just having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool of it.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of things that I would say have like a remotely comparable vibe to Fooly Cooly, but this is definitely up there.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It definitely has that same feeling too of, shifting tones in very good and very impressive ways.
Yeah, I was I'm on the record as messaging replay value after like I was a few episodes in. It was just like the more I watch of this, the more I completely understand like why Matsumoto like pivoted to mostly doing like music videos, because it just it feels like it fits like her style so well, because like and like this extends to like her other work with Kekai Sensen as well, where like there's just like it's just a playground where she can do like whatever she wants, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of points in Kyosougiga that are like that in Kekai Sensen, and then again music videos are kind of the like ultimate distillation of that, where it's just like you have only a couple of minutes, but you have music and you just have to tell like a complete story, or in her case sometimes like just several little tiny bits of things here and there, like with the like the chocolate ad or like the Pokemon Gacha one. It's just like just being able to just hit the viewer with as much visual information as possible and make it like cool as hell. Like just feels like Kyosougiga is just a longer form of that.
Totally. I didn't know that about the director, but this definitely does feel like music video.
I feel like as well kind of the use of like kind of like abstracting things. I can't think of any examples.
No, I think the whole thing kind of counts. The whole thing counts.
Yeah.
I think as well, in terms of like what things kind of visually, I can't save it. It's gone.
Oh no.
I hate that. I know exactly that feeling.
That
it's just like, and the
feel
thought.
the thought slipping out of your head.
Yep.
I'll let us know if it comes back to you.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess it wouldn't be a replay value related topic since you brought up Matsumoto. Shout out to our girl. Maybe we should call her like the Queen of Chaos because I feel like she does nail that chaos aspect. But I do think her directing is at like possibly its best here. It's very interesting because there are so many dynamic shots that like sometimes I was noticing when there wasn't as much animation, like something would be off screen where like the characters would be off screen, but you don't really notice because there's so many interesting shots happening all the time. Mm-hmm. So it blends everything really well together.
I have so many screen caps of just like no characters, just like the environments and stuff. It's so pretty.
Yeah, everything looks so gorgeous and so dynamic. And there's so many just very impressive shots. Like sometimes I'll just take shots and I was like, you know what, this is it. And there's so many of I was looking at one that's just so effective where they were showing, well, this is just something actually that they've shown in multiple episodes, specifically in like episode 6 after, why is his like that? Yakishimaro?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You're close enough.
Yakushimaru. I'm not sure where the emphasis is supposed to be.
Me neither. I need help with that. I need to phone a friend on that. But it's like right after they're kind of like, you're immortal now, you can't kill yourself, kind of deal with it. And they show this montage of the seasons passing, and you get to see, you know, him eventually warming up to his family after a long time. And then you show, they start showing his siblings being added and just them throughout the seasons and them engaging in fun activities. And the character animation does a really great job of showing the type of characters that we've already known them to be, is like the chaotic, dysfunctional aspect of their family in a very heartwarming way. And then it kind of ends with just a shot in the same setting, like the temple with the leaves in the background, but it goes to like black and white, and there's like a red line in the middle between the 2 parents and the 3 siblings. And it's just something so effective after like a 5-10 minute segment of showing the good times to show how like impactful that was for the whole family and how it, you know, kind of just tore them apart.
Yeah.
I really like, I have one shot here where it's like they're all sitting in like the temple, and they're like, you even have like the little the pillars or whatever of like the temple, like separating them all into these neat little squares. And like, yeah, that's just a really evocative visual, I guess. Yeah, visual.
Yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
what's so cool about the directing is that it is so, as we've been saying over and over, so over the top, so bombastic, but when it settles down, it has these like very simple, well composed shots that just, you know, a little bit of stillness and just that one shot shows you everything you need to know about what's happening.
I love the whole sequence of Koto and Myoe like walking in like the field, and you have the sunset over like the mountains in the background, and there's like that bridge thing sort of behind them. It's just so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that one a lot. And that was in the.
Is that an aqueduct?
That was a.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. No,
Maybe?
that's such a good point. Good call. It might be an aqueduct.
I didn't take many screenshots, but that was one of the ones I had, and I see it off in the corner. I'm like, I don't know, but like it's either like that or it's like just like a train bridge or something.
I wanted to call it something other than a thing.
Makes sense. Yeah, that was a cool thing too, because they had the cool scenes of like them riding in the scooter throughout the city, which is like a lot more like lighthearted, and then they have that, and you're like, okay, we know something special is coming.
Yeah, it's this like Matsumoto knows when to make it bombastic and make it like fun like that, but also when to counterbalance that with like stuff that is again like more still, more methodical, and like makes those moments like hit just as hard as the like over the top action or chaos does.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Rather than it just being like chaos for chaos sake and like how can we one up ourselves this episode?
And it's interesting too that in a lot of ways the show kind of gets like how do I want to say this? It's almost like the tone of it simmers down as the show goes on rather than ramping up like you would see in most series.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it has like the big climactic ending with like the literal apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
But it still feels, compared to the early episodes, like there's somehow so much less chaos going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. And it's cool. It is cool to see. It's almost like peeling back the layers, and it's like underneath all the chaos of the day to day, it's like this really like, heartwarming story and heartwarming family of like everyone trying to be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the action just like distills everything down to like the base elements of the interpersonal relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say. I think we said a lot, but I'm like drawing a blank because there's so much, but I think at the end of the day, it's a series I really appreciate and respect and definitely would recommend to people. I think it's a really cool kind of underwatched gem. I would definitely love to see more people see it because I think it does have a really compelling message that has so much fun and chaotic energy to it that, even if some people might not always be inclined to watch more abstract series like this that don't overtly tell you what's going on moment to moment, that jumps around, and very chaotic in nature, I think there's a lot that can stick with people, and it makes me happy to see people give it a chance, and that when they don't copyright strike it, that there are people making cool videos on it. So
absolutely. I think I never thought about it this way, but you guys absolutely nailed it earlier at the beginning of this podcast when you were saying that, yeah, it's the type of show that like people who like to talk about anime like to make videos on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not very accessible, but if you, the listener, are someone who likes things that open themselves up to a lot of thought, then this is one you shouldn't miss.
Definitely. I don't think we even spoiled it too much because, I mean, there's a lot going on. So I think that definitely take this as like another recommendation for it. It is funny because I'm glad that Taser and Mathwiz that you both got to watch it, even though it was from losing a bet. I'm glad we got to make a podcast on it from losing a bet, but you never really feel like you're losing anything watching this show. You don't feel like a loser. So
definitely not.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so to everyone listening, I mean, this was like the best type of bet to lose. We all came away as winners. I'm hoping to win more in fantasy though, so I want to be a winner, like in fantasy and from watching this show. So, that was kind of everything I had to say. I'm not sure if you guys had anything else you wanted to add, any more food for thought.
Just kind of on the same level, like, recommending people check it out because I think like, I didn't necessarily know what I was going to talk about the show coming in. I was like, do I need to like, again, speed rewatch this because there is just so much that, you kind of try to parse. But, I had a lot of fun just because, there's so many different potential interpretations and readings of so many different elements of the series that I think like if you are someone that has friends that also like watch anime or like take recommendations, like I would 100% like recommend watching with them and like being able to like discuss it as you go because I think that could be like a really rich and fun experience for a series.
That's
like
how
this.
I first experienced it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If I had any final thoughts, the scientist girl is cute. That is all.
And she's voiced by Saito Chiwa.
Yeah.
Let's
Her
go.
performance is so good.
She's great. I love her. She's great minor character, but she leaves a great impact. So
Yeah.
we stan a queen.
I'll leave off on a kind of goofy fun fact that Kyosougiga is arguably an adaptation of the oldest manga ever.
Oh.
The title is a reference to the Kyousogiga, which is it literally translates to animal caricature scrolls.
Oh wow.
And it's like this famous art piece that they show at one point in one of the flashbacks, old original Mioe like drawing the Kyousogiga during his time as like a priest in Kyoto.
That makes so much sense because they like, it's like all those animals are like part of the scrolls that he drew. That's awesome.
Right.
That's really
Well,
neat.
thank you for sharing that so people do not think this means like Giga isn't like Giga Chad, like a Twitch mode. So we are saved from that, even though I will probably meme it is like Kyousogiga is Giga Chad. Awesome.
We didn't even touch on like the ridiculous amounts of wordplay in the series, but that's a huge part of it too.
Yeah, that's another couple rewatches. Hopefully, I will get to that point.
Well, the big one is just that like Kyoto is the name of like the real city. Which like literally the characters in it mean capital city, but then Kyoto is also the name of the Looking Glass city, but the characters there literally translate as mirror capital. Mm-hmm. As like a reflection of the actual Kyoto.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
That makes sense. And it always struck me how like Lady Koto, like the Black Rabbit, the reason she ends up back on the moon is like the classic Japanese legend where like there are rabbits on the moon. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
can't
that just
believe
harkens
I
back to
never
it.
made that connection here.
There are lots of layers to that sort of stuff.
There's layers to it. Yeah. I forget. I don't know if that's it's not from Kaguya, not the rom-com, but the original folklore.
Tale of
I don't
Princess
think
Kaguya,
I don't think that's the one, but there is something about like rabbits on the moon that I hear a lot.
The moon rabbit is like a big thing in all sorts of different like East Asian mythologies.
I was just thinking to like Super Mario Odyssey and like the final level is on the moon and you fight rabbits.
I think I was reading on this while cramming some information because I didn't get to rewatch before this episode. But I guess the Koto being the black rabbit here is a reference to a Japanese version of that story where there's like a starving monk and a rabbit like throws itself onto a fire in order to provide food for him, and its reward for like its devotion is to be like placed on the moon.
Oh, interesting.
Huh.
I remember hearing about that at some point, but I would not be able to like remember when that was or where that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there are a lot of layers, basically.
There's lots of layers. Yeah. Yeah, I guess knowing Japanese culture and knowing Japanese would help, but I'm only bits and pieces. Honestly, most of it comes from Gintama, which is probably why a lot of it is going over my head. Probably not the best source of Japanese knowledge. But yeah, so I'm glad that we all had fun with this. I was waiting to see if anyone had like a hot take or was like, this was not it. I can't believe replay value made me do this, but I'm glad we didn't get there.
I feel like the only like hot take I could have made was in response to you bringing up Gintama, but I will not say anything.
We'll bring that back for the next bet loss Gintama podcast. Everyone's waiting. But no, I like Gintama.
If Shaw wins the fantasy league, everyone else needs to watch all of Gintama.
Well, that's what replay value was saying. He's like, if everyone, where I think Tay was like, if Shaw wins, watching Gintama, and I was like, I would never force so many episodes on someone. And then I was like, you mean Echo though? 200 hours, here you come. So no one is safe. But yeah, so it turns out it was better that replay value won. We all actually watched the show. We actually recorded this podcast. He was like, it looks like it's never happening. I was like, you don't know the process. You don't know our internal process, which is the lack of process.
If we want to make an episode, we need to talk about it for at least 3 months before getting around to doing it.
Yeah. Like don't you know? We gotta buy the topic dinner. We gotta wine and dine them. We gotta get to know the topic. So that's the internal process we have going on. But I am really thankful for TazerLad, Mathwiz, Sinrus, all of you guys joining. I mean, we technically, most of us losers, but we came away winning. Sinrus, you didn't even lose anything. You're just here to have fun. So I'm glad we could all have like a really fun experience, even if I'm not sure how you guys are actually doing in fantasy. I think I'm doing not well. I think I'm losing this week. So
I think we're playing this week. Yeah. it's
am I playing you?
Yeah, I think so.
I am playing you. Oh my god, I was projected to win 5 hours ago, and now it's not looking good. So I mean,
my team has literally been like a heartbeat, where it's like 1 week I am like the highest scorer, and the next week I am the lowest scorer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I also love just like watching the little projection meters where it's like, okay, this is like a sure thing, and then a couple of minutes or hours later it'll be like the other way, and it's like, okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's like we know you have like an 80% chance to win. Don't worry. And then it's like, oh, they caught a touchdown. Well, now sorry, you are now like 60% likely to only win. And then
it just keeps making me think of the SB Nation thing on the Falcons, and just like how long has it been wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I double checked, and we're actually all around the same. We're in the same division, and we're all around the same standing. But like, yeah, like it's not looking good. It's looking better for both of you. It's not looking good for me. So, I'm glad that you all came on, because that's the only place I'm winning. This podcast is the only place I'm winning. So.
Oh my god, I love that your league is the Char Animal Memorial League.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we went all in on like the weeb names.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much. I have to look up everyone's name. I'll tell you when we're done. I'll tell you the funny names when we're done. But
sure.
Yeah, for everyone else listening, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please check out Kyousogiga. You don't need to lose a bet to have a lot of fun with this series. It's on Crunchyroll. It's very accessible. So please check it out. And if you do, let us know what you think. But that's all for us. Thank you to my amazing co-hosts, and have a good night.